Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. Glad to have you here today. My name is Henrik Bick. I'm here with the communications team at the Music Business Association. Glad to welcome you to today's session in the Common Ground webinar series. But before I introduce our host today and kick things off, I just have a couple of housekeeping notes I wanted to share with you. First off, for today's session, as always, in order to connect with one another in the chat box during the session, be sure to change your chat settings to everyone, so that way everyone can see your messages. We did have an issue last session where that setting wasn't enabled out on the outset, so we are good to go as far as this session goes. And we will be taking questions with our presenter at the end of the session today, so be sure to drop any questions you may come across during the presentation in the dedicated Q&A box on your Zoom dashboard. A couple of notes on events outside of the webinar series for you. Just moments ago, we are excited to share with you the first details for Nylon Connect 2023, happening January 16th and 17th, both in person at Reed Smith in London and with a virtual component. You can access both of those tickets at nylonconnect.com right now. We also announced the tracks for the 2023 event that will be covered during the 2 days, as well as our first three keynote speakers, Oana Ruxandra of Warner Music Group, Cameo Carlson and Kadeem Phillips, respectively of M Theory and Power Entertainment, and Andrea Gleason of TuneCore. They'll both be headlining some of our tracks during the Nylon Connect event, so be sure to visit nylonconnect.com again to register today, either for your virtual ticket or for your in-person ticket at Reed Smith. And in case you missed the news last week, we launched the dates and early information for Music Biz 2023. It'll be taking place May 2023 over at the JW Marriott Nashville once again. Registration, hotel bookings, our call for presentations, and more are now available at musicbiz2023.com. Be sure to drop all these links in the chat for you for easier checking, but you can also visit our website, musicbiz.org, and our social channels at musicbizassoc on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram for more information and all the important links. And finally, back on the webinar series, our full slate for the fall has been announced with upcoming sessions coming down the pike from SoundCloud, Exactuals, and more. And our next session will be taking place in 2 weeks on October 13th with Music Biz Member Session. But out of the future, let's talk about the present today and the current state of artist financing and how that's evolving. In order to discuss that today, we brought in beatBread, and I'm thrilled to welcome beatBread's Head of Artist and Industry Development, Matthew Tilley. Take it away, Matt.
Myself on. Am I on? It says I can't start video. Oh, here we go. There we go. Start my video. I'm on. Fantastic. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome. I'm speaking to you live from glorious Hoboken, New Jersey. Don't let my accent fool you. I am British, but I've lived in the US for about 22 years at this point. So what are we going to do? We're going to talk about artist funding and financing. The general scheme is I'm going to just tell you a little bit about how beatBread got started initially. Then I have a short PowerPoint presentation, and I mean short is 3 slides, so don't panic when you hear the word PowerPoint. And then I'm going to give you a demo of the product, how it actually works, and then we're going to take some questions. So with that said, beatBread background. So our founder, who's my boss, is a guy called Peter Sinclair, who's not a music business guy by trade. He spent his career in various different venture-backed startups and then got headhunted to go work at Universal about 7 years ago now. As is often the case for people who come into the music business from outside, he was confused about lots of things and the slightly unusual ways maybe that we do things to people from the outside. And one of the things he was really surprised about was the number of artists who didn't want to use all the services that Universal had sort of built into their package. And after some back and forth and some investigating, he ended up saying to a very senior executive, I think at Republic Records, are we just a check to some of these artists? And the guy kind of laughed at him, basically, and in a very nice way, but said, "Oh, in many cases we are that. They've got their own team, they've got their own PR person, they've got their own radio person, they've got their own digital person. They really do just look to us for funding." And that was sort of the light bulb moment for Peter of thinking, well, if some artists, not all obviously, but if some artists just need funding to move their career forward because they know how to do the rest of it and they have their own people, then surely there's a better way to get them a check, right? Than taking over their masters for life and giving them a 18 or 20% royalty rate or whatever that traditionally is. So that was the idea. Peter then went and licensed a big data set from Nielsen, and he found a data scientist who, again, had never worked in music. John, his co-founder, our CTO, has built models and algorithmic models in energy markets and insurance markets and those kinds of things. Peter gave him this data set and said, look, with enough data and enough research, can you build an algorithm that will effectively predict an artist's future streaming income? And after about 3 data scientists and 6 months of work, they came back and said, yeah, we can. And that's when we knew we were really onto something, right? Because if you can predict an artist's future streaming income with a decent degree of accuracy, you can make a lot of deals that won't lose money, as opposed to the traditional music business model where most of the deals a label will lose money and they're relying on one to make up the difference for all of them. So anyway, that's the sort of background how beatBread got up and running. The website I'll show you launched in November 2020. We were doing, 1 or 2 deals a month at that point. We're doing more than a deal a day on average at this point. We're closing in on 500 deals made. And yeah, so it's going well. And obviously we're here to spread the word and make sure as many people know what's on offer. So with that said, little PowerPoint, and as I said, I promise it's short. Share that. Play from the start. Here we go. Okay. So what is beatBread? First thing to tell you is what we're not. We're not a label. We're not a distributor. We're not an artist services company. We think all those things are really important, especially artist services. It's very important an artist matches with the right services. We just know that we don't do that, and we don't have an ambition to do that. We think artists should separate as often as possible their funding from how they choose all their other services, that they'll get a better result by doing that. Essentially, we provide musicians and their partners with funding, right? We are at our heart, it's very boring and sort of painful for me as an ex-label person to say this, but we're a data science and business process company. That's what we're really good at. We are obviously music adjacent and we fund music and musicians, but we're not a traditional music company in any sense of the word. What's happening with my PowerPoint? Okay, so what do we actually offer? So with beatBread, artists can get an advance between $1,000 and $2 million. It's all determined by data science. Come on to more of that in a minute. They keep 100% ownership of their music. That's really important. Our deal doesn't take any ownership position. We don't license the music. The actual legal structure of the deal is we're buying the artist's income in advance. So it's a revenue purchase agreement. The artist doesn't pay any interest. You'll see in the demo, the deals are structured with a royalty rate, similar to how a record label deal is structured, with a much more favorable royalty rate in most cases. But the main point about not having interest on a deal is if it underperforms in some way, that's our loss, and the artist isn't having to pay back more than was originally envisioned. The artist gets to see over 200 different advance options within minutes of coming to the site. They get to choose their own distribution, production, and marketing partners. We have artists on about 35 different distributors at this point. We've found 1 or 2 that we can't work with because they weren't willing to let us secure the income at the distribution level. I'll come to a bit more detail on that, but really we just provide the funding and we don't make any stipulations about what the artist can do with it. The artist gets to choose which tracks they want to include in their deal. So they could just get an advance against 1 catalog album or 5 tracks that they've chosen from their catalog, or they can exclude a couple of tracks if for some reason they need to do that. They can choose to keep a share of their monthly income. So we're not looking to take over all of an artist's monthly income. If they need to retain some to pay their rent or buy groceries or whatever those fixed costs they might have, they can choose to do that. They get to choose their deal term. Again, I'll show you this on the screen coming up in the demo, but we offer 1, 2, 3, 5, and sometimes 8-year deals. They can then choose to include or not include future releases. So we always need to have some catalog in the deal, some already issued tracks, but we will also fund 5 new songs, 10 new songs, those sorts of packages that, again, you'll see in the options coming up. And generally, it's about a week-long process, right? From the artist coming to the site, uploading their reports, and going through the deal process with us and getting money in their bank account. Sometimes it goes a little faster, sometimes it goes a little slower, but Just want to emphasize, it's not sort of get cash quick. We're not sort of payday lender, get you out of a hole by giving you money tomorrow, but also it's not a long drawn out 2 or 3 month process to get funded. A few other notes before we go into the demo. Number one, the minimum qualification to get funded. It's about $100 a month, right? So again, we buy an artist income in advance. We're making an advance on their income. They need some income in order to be able to do that, right? $100 is about the threshold. That usually means about 10,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. We've got artists who are actually meaningless on Spotify. They're in Nigeria and they're huge on Boomplay in Nigeria. So that's not an absolute qualification, but that's a sort of a guide. It also depends a lot on what momentum we're seeing, right? If it's 10,000 monthly listeners, but those listeners are very intense listeners and there's not a lot coming from playlists and everything's growing really fast, that artist will probably see an offer. Somebody who's got 10,000 monthly listeners, but everything's in decline and a lot of it's coming from playlists, they may not see an offer. You really don't know until you come to the site and find out. We also do funding for labels. So exactly the same idea of looking at the data on the streaming income and projecting what it's going to be in the future, making an advance against the catalog. We can absolutely do that. We just don't have an interface for that yet. So if that's of interest to you, please reach out to me. If you're a manager and your artist is seeing offers in the sort of $100,000 range or more, but you think, oh, I've got this big new project coming up, I think we're worth more than that. Again, please contact me. We have a product coming up that's sort of in beta at the moment that we think will be very helpful for you in that situation. If you're a distributor or an artist services company, imagine everything you're about to see rebranded with your logo, fonts, and colors. That's what we call our white label product. We have 20 partners that have launched with this so far, and it's basically our exact system, but rebranded under the colors and color scheme and fonts and logos of the partner. So we're providing all the back-end services. We let the partner choose whether we actually provide the cash or not. So if the partner's cash rich but time poor, we can actually service the deals, but the partner's providing their own funding, or we can provide the funding as well in that situation. Matthew@beatbread.com is my email address. I'm here to help. That's my job, artist and industry development. So if you guys have questions at the end of this that we haven't answered, or you're interested in label funding, or you've put your artist in the system and you're confused about something, please reach out. We're here to help. I'd also say that if and when you register on the site, we give anybody who comes in 2 slots to look up artists. If you need more slots for some reason, again, please reach out to me. We can add slots to your account. There's no need to go and use, multiple email addresses to register or anything like that. That's it. That is the PowerPoint. You'll be glad to hear, short and sweet, hopefully. And I will now close that and move on to the demo. So here we go. beatbread.com, guys. This is the homepage. I've sort of talked about what the deal is, or the main sort of points of the deal here. And this is where an artist would get started. They're simply going to come here, type in an artist name. We give them a whole bunch of possible matches, pick it out of the list, give us an email address, tell us you're not a robot, and hit let's go. That takes about 20 minutes normally the first time for us to pull in all the publicly available data that we need. So you can sit tight and hang out on the site while that happens, or you can wait to get an email confirming we're ready. When you get that email, or when we're ready, you'll come to a page that looks a lot like this. So we're showing, here's the artist name, right? And we're saying, does this data look right? And what we're showing here is the tracks that make up about 80% of this artist's streaming volume in the prior month. So you see down here, total streams last month, 7.5 million. And this data is principally coming from Luminate, which was called Nielsen, guys. So this is coming from all platforms, right? Deezer and YouTube and Apple and Spotify and everywhere, and globally, wherever we can pull those streams in from. So we're listing out the tracks that make up about 80% of the streaming volume. You see all other tracks, 1.5 million here. We're not listing out every single track. It would be a very long list in this artist's case. We're showing the name of the track. We're showing what it streamed last month. These orange lines are not labeled, but they're 12-week progressions, so you can see how these tracks have been performing over time. The important part of this screen is this column, artist share of streaming income. Now, if we see metadata that allows us to make a guess, as in here, we're seeing a featured artist on this track, so we're guessing that that artist is getting 20%, but we might be completely wrong, right? So the sort of adjustments you might make here are to say, we pay a producer 20% on this song, or this song got signed to a label on a 50-50 deal, so we're only actually getting 50% of the income from this track. If I can get that at 50, there we go. Or you know what, I just want to exclude that track from the deal altogether. You get the idea. This is in service of giving you the most accurate possible estimates as quickly as we can, right? So that's the first question we ask. What is your share of streaming income on any of these particular tracks? Make those adjustments. They don't have to be dead on. We do verify everything later, but it will mean if these are pretty accurate, that your estimates are pretty accurate. You hit confirm. Last question we ask is, how much streaming income did you receive last month? Again, doesn't need to be dead accurate. We're making an estimate here. Hopefully it's pretty accurate, but you might say, actually, it was more like 27,500, right? Again, this just allows us to give you the most accurate possible estimates as quickly as possible. Hit continue. This is where the data science comes in, right? So we have 8 full-time data scientists now. They're based in St. George, Utah. They're not looking at every individual deal, but they are every week revising and refreshing how the algorithm works and how it interacts with the data. And it's starting to learn itself and get better and better. Of the 500 deals we've done, more than 70% are recouping at or ahead of where we predicted. So we're pretty confident in the algorithm at this point, but we know we can always improve and make it better. So what's happened here? We've made an offer, or made a sort of put a stake in the ground of an estimate, and we're showing an offer against catalog plus 5 new songs plus an option for 5 more on a 3-year term. And that's produced all these numbers over here on the right-hand side. But let's start simple, and I'll build it up for you. So this top slider, you're choosing, and just bear in mind at the moment, all these are estimates, right? They're estimates until we see the reports, but it hopefully gives you a directional idea of what's available. This top slider, you're choosing what music's included in the deal. Here on the left, it's catalog only. That means we're only advancing against tracks that have already been released. Anything you'd release in the future, we wouldn't touch it at all. This slider, you're choosing the length of the deal. Do you want a 1-year deal, a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal, a 5-year deal? Like I said, sometimes we offer an 8-year deal, but if that would cause the royalty rate to go below 50%, we'll drop it off because we just don't offer royalty rates that are below 50%. And then here I talked about this, the ability of the artist to keep some of their income. So think of this as the cash flow slider. So this artist we said was making, I think, $27,500 a month. If they want to keep $2,750 a month, they can choose to keep 10% of their income, or 20, or 30, or 40, all the way up to 90%, right? Of course, it affects the amount of advance the artist is going to get, but it means they can keep some cash flow during the deal. So what does moving these sliders actually mean? Right, so on a catalog only 1-year deal with the artist not keeping any income, this particular artist, we're estimating we get about $263,000, and that's at an 89% recoupment rate. So what does that mean? I'm sure lots of you know already, but just to spell it out, for every dollar that comes in from the distributor, 89 cents goes towards the recoupment, and 11 cents is coming to beatBread, right? We also offer on catalog only deals, because they're pretty low risk for us at this point, what we call a step-up royalty. So if we were kind of wrong and this deal recouped even faster than a year, because we're saying with a pretty strong degree of confidence that this is going to be a year-long deal, but if it recoups faster, here you go, 93% of the income gets paid through to the artist if recoupment happens after 10 months or 11 months for the remainder of the term. And I can hear some people asking, well, what if it doesn't recoup in a year? Excellent question. The deal actually just continues until literally the day it's recouped. It's worth saying that deals that take longer to recoup are in fact less profitable for us because the artist has had our money for longer. So this is not a sort of bait and switch of, oh, we'll say it's a year, but we know it's going to be 15 months. No, we say it's a year, expecting it's going to be a year, hoping for everybody's benefit, it's going to be less than a year because everybody does better then. But if it takes a bit longer to recoup, we just carry on collecting until you're recouped. And like I said before, there's no interest, there's no penalties, nothing bad happens in that situation. So what choices do the artist have at this point? Well, if they want more money, they can pick a longer deal, right? So a 2-year deal will get this artist to $455,000, but the recoupment rate goes down. So you're at an 80% recoupment rate. There's the time value of money, right? So if the deal's 2 years instead of 1, the recoupment rate needs to go down. And there's a slightly bigger risk spread when we're forecasting on longer terms. So those are the 2 main reasons that the royalty rate goes down when the term goes up. A 3-year deal will get this artist $555,000 at a 70% recoupment rate, and a 5-year would get them, let's see, $672,000 at a 60% recoupment rate. Now, bear in mind, guys, 2 things. One, this recoupment rate is sort of stays in the same kind of bands depending on the length of the deal, but it will vary depending on the artist and the risk profile we see. And the other thing to bear in mind is the ratio between a 1-year and a 2-year and a 2-year and a 3-year is not fixed. You can't see what happens for one artist and apply that to another artist. we actually forecast on a track by track basis and then amalgamate those for each artist to give them their predictions. Some artists will go from a 1 to 2 year and see 60% be added to their number. Other artists will go from a 1 to 2 year and see almost 100% get added to their number. Some will see it even actually go up more than 100% because we're actually forecasting their catalog's going to grow over time. Really is individually calculated on a by artist basis. So that's the time part. You can also, as I mentioned earlier, put new music in the deal. So here we are now, we're looking at catalog plus 5 new songs, right? So now you have this upfront advance amount, 263,000. And we're saying we'd estimate 75,000 against 5 new songs. And again, that's on a 1-year deal, right? So the artists could say, well, what does that look like on a 2-year deal? And so on. If they're more prolific or more of an album type of artist, we can say it's catalog plus 10 new songs. The original deal I showed you, catalog plus 5 with an option for 5 more. Now you have the upfront advance amount, the new release advance amount, and the option amount. And this is our option in this case, guys. We see how the deal is recouping. If it's recouping on time, we'll take that option. And if we don't take it, the artist is free to go and release that elsewhere. And the last deal there, catalog plus 10 songs, plus an option for 10 more. So you can see for this artist, we got, and this is a reasonably chunky artist. They're managed by Crush Management, and we actually did a deal with them. So I know these numbers are relatively real. But for a catalog 1-year deal, they're at 263,000, right? And if we max everything out to 10 plus 10, and on a 5-year, they're at 1.48 million. So there's a broad range of outcomes, and obviously, and that's without including this bottom slider of letting the artist choose some cash flow as well. Okay, anyway, play around, find something you think makes sense. There's no commitment at this point, obviously, but the next thing is this button here, continue to upload your reports. So this is where we obviously need to validate actually what we think we're seeing, right? We can pull in a lot of publicly available data, but there's a few nuances that we can't see in the artist report and in the data that we get. So we're asking for 6 months of detailed reports from their distributor, right? So how does that work? Click on here. There's a bunch of different distributors listed. Don't worry if yours isn't there. You just click other at the bottom. This is the level of detail we're looking for. It's a very, very detailed report. It's usually 10 or 20 or 30,000 lines of Excel data. For many of the distributors, we tell you exactly how to get it. DistroKid, for example, I think it's 2 clicks. You click on bank, you click see excruciating detail, and then you click download. When you have that report, you just drag and drop it here and you hit confirm. You can add multiple distributors. So maybe you've got some tracks on, who should I pick on? I don't know, 1 RPM, let's say. Again, we tell you how to log in and how to get those reports, drag and drop them, hit confirm. Once you've added all the reports for all the distributors you want to include, check this little box at the bottom and hit submit for review. That takes us a couple of days, right, to process that. They get machine read, they go through what we call the diligence process, and then a human being actually looks at the deal at the end just to make sure nothing's gone tragically wrong at the end. The idea is to get back to you with an email in 1 or 2 days later. And then if I switch over here, oh, I don't know where that came from. Yeah, you will get an email. You'll click on the email, come back into your account. And now you see the word confirmed here, right? So this offer is confirmed. If that was the deal structure you looked at and you still like it, that's great. If it's not, that's okay. You can click on adjust these terms. Hopefully this is going to work. Yeah, so you can go back in and move these sliders again, knowing you're now looking at confirmed numbers. Everything here is 100% ready to go from our side. So again, you can move these sliders around, find a deal that makes the most sense, hit save. And then if you're happy with all of that, yes, continue. And this will generate an offer letter. So the offer letter is sort of a summary of the deal. We lay out all the main points. We lay out some math in what my boss would call bloody detail of exactly how the deal works. So it's a little bit small here, but we're giving the advance amount, we're giving the royalty rate, we're giving the term. And then on this next page, we actually do the math of how it all breaks down, how much you'll need to recoup and how it all works. Then we actually lay out for all the different categories of income, where that income is getting divided. Again, we don't touch publishing or merch or sync or any of those other things. We list out all the tracks that are included in the deal and what percentage of the ownership is and which distributor they're on. And then there's an FAQ with a whole bunch of additional information at the end there. And if you want to do that, you're going to hit proceed. And then there's a form to fill in, which allows us to generate a contract. Contract comes out for electronic signature and DocuSign. And then the last bit of the puzzle, guys, is we need to take over income at the distributor level. That is a non-negotiable. We need to make sure we're getting paid every month. We're not in the business of calling artists, right, and saying it's time for your repayment. So we have a bunch of different ways of doing that. With several distributors, we have parent-child accounts where we can move the artist's account under our account for the term of the deal, which means they still have access to the account, but they can't take down the tracks and they can't change where the money's going. With a lot of distributors, we use a letter of direction. We'll provide that simple letter from the artist to the distributor saying, please pay beatBread instead of me. And with a couple of sort of very DIY distributors, the unfortunate truth is we have to take over the account. So we actually change the password on the account for the period of the term. But we've done that with probably 40 or 50 artists at this point, and it works okay. We've got an operations team who handle their uploads and handle reporting for them. So we've got a way around that as well. And I think that's it for the main part of the presentation. So Henrik, are you there to help with questions and so on?
Yes, and before we get started with that, I just want to extend our thanks from the Music Biz team over here to you, Matthew, and to beatBread for today's insightful presentation. Really cool to get to a walkthrough of the platform as it is. We do have one question in the Q&A, and folks, if you have any other additional questions, feel free to drop them in your Q&A box now. But our question as stands now, is there a way to take into account any non-streaming income, that is touring, merch, and the like?
Short answer is no. And hi, Kelly. Yeah, we streaming income is fairly easy to see. So getting those reports is generally easy. We actually now think it's very easy to predict, and it's also very easy to collect. And other sources of income, publishing, touring, merch, and all those things are generally none of those things, right? They're not very easy to see, they're not very easy to predict, and they're not very easy to collect. So we would like to move into some of those areas. Publishing would probably be the first one that we get into, but at the moment it's streaming income, and streaming income. But good question.
Looks like we are wrapped up with questions, at least for the time being. Again, thank you, Matthew.
Oh, hang on. We got one more. We got one more, Henrik. Conrad wants to know, how do we actually make money? Conrad, that's an excellent question. So two principal ways. Well, kind of three ways, actually. So one part I didn't mention, and my bad, there's an arrangement fee. Now, before I tell you what it is, it just gets added to the recoupable balance. So no one's actually, writing a check or getting a credit card out at the beginning, but we charge 2.8% of the amount advanced plus $228. So on a $10,000 advance, it's about $450. So instead of needing to recoup $10,000, the artist needs to recoup $10,450. That's the first way. The second way is the royalty rate, right? So on the first example I showed you on a 1-year catalog only deal, it's an 89% royalty rate. 89% of the income is going towards recoupment and 11% is coming to us. Now, obviously we have sources of capital that we need to pay and all those things, but those are the two principal ways we make money. We also have investors in the artist fund, and we also charge them a fee on the money we make for them, assuming we make money for them, which we've been doing so far. So those are the three principal ways: is the small fee to the investors, a small fee to the artist, and then whatever the sort of split between what our cost of capital is and what the royalty rate is in the deal. You're welcome, Conrad. I'm very polite. Okay.
It seems at the moment we don't have anything else, but as we go wrap up here, and if anybody has any other questions to drop in, just would you remind the chat of your email address in case anything comes up after the session concludes?
Do you think that means I did a really clear presentation, Henrik?
There must be. If there's no questions, then you must have answered everything up top. That's what I think.
I love it. Matthew with 2 T's at beatbread.com. There you go, guys. It's in the chat. Feel free to hit me up. But honestly, if you've got an artist and you're curious about them, the best thing you can do is go to beatbread.com and type in the artist name and your email address. And in about 20 minutes, usually you'll be. It might be slightly slower if a whole bunch of you jump on there and do that, but that's the best way to get started. Aha, we have another question. Does beatBread support only the performing artists this way, or can the model be used by songwriters as well? Well, Def, a couple of answers to that. One is we don't look at publishing yet. So if it's just publishing income they're getting, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do for them. If they're getting paid by an artist via split on the streaming, we might be able to help. But the crucial bit comes in actually taking control of the income. and normally if a contributor, a side artist, or a featured artist, whoever is getting paid by a split from the original artist, it's normally pretty hard to take over that flow of income with 100% security. So yeah, I probably not is the answer to the question, Def. But if you've got something else in mind or want to explore something, feel free to reach out.
Great. Now, as we're wrapping up here, again, I want to thank you, Matthew. I want to thank the beatBread
one
folks.
more, Henrik. One more.
See, if we wanted to just conjure up any questions, all you had to do is just get me talking.
Okay, so let's see. So Marquand says, if an artist makes less money on their own, do they get less of an advance, or do you predict growth? Yeah, so we do predict growth, absolutely. So that's one of the things we look at. Most catalogs decline over time, right? About 95% of catalogs will decline from any point in time to, obviously new tracks might perform differently, but the existing tracks will generally decline. But we very much look to forecast growth if it's there, and if the model suggests it's happening. And we're looking at thousands and thousands of different data points on every artist. So if there's growth to be forecast, we do forecast it.
We do have another question that popped in the chat from Samiko.
Yeah, answer about songwriters, probably relevant to producers as well. Yeah, exactly, Samiko. Producers, the same problem as almost any other contributor. As I said, just to sort of repeat myself, we need to take over the income at source. And for a solo artist who owns all their own tracks and they're on a straightforward distributor, that's really easy to do. But if a producer has produced tracks for 10 different artists and is getting paid by a split for all those different artists, it's really challenging we can predict that income, but it's really challenging to collect it in a secure way. So yeah, that's the challenge there. But again, if the producer for some reason has their own distribution account, has a bunch of tracks on that distribution account, and they control the account, and some money may be going to artists or contributors or whoever, but if they're controlling that income, we may be able to do something. What does Dre say? I'm wondering if any resources we're collecting with artists. No, Dre, got nothing. We may at some point in the future launch a sort of partner directory. We're keen to do that when we can apply data science to actually give sort of value scores to those partners. We don't just want to say, oh, here's a bunch of companies you could look at. We'd love to be able to say, this company we know from evidence is really good in this area, and this company is really good in this area, and this producer is really good at this genre, and those kinds of things. But no particular contacts with producers and music video directors and so on, I'm afraid. Not our specialty. Oh, great question, Samiko. Thank you. Samiko says, what would happen if an artist received a label offer during the duration of the term? Would there be any latitude to renegotiate or buy out the term? So we have sort of tried to protect against any sort of haggling. Just to let you guys kind of behind the curtain, when we were setting up the company, we're going through with the lawyer what the contract should look like. He said, okay, one of the things you need to think about is what if an artist wants to buy out? And Peter, my boss, said, well, what would happen if they were trying to buy out, from an indie label or something? And he said, oh, well, you kind of rub your hands together and go, great, this is where we get to make some money. And Peter said, I definitely don't want to do that. Let's come up with a math formula. So in the contract, there is a math formula that says, if you want to buy out, and I haven't memorized it, I'm sorry to say, but it's sort of how many months are left on the deal divided by how much you've been earning over the previous 6 months. It's the intention of the formula in the contract is to let an artist get out of their deal in a fair way to both parties if they want to. Of course, you can't just pay off what you still owe and leave, because if we let everybody do that, and anyone whose tracks were really performing well would just buy out of their deal immediately, right? But it's really intended to let people leave the deal in a fair way if they want to. So yeah, there's just a buyout clause written into the deal. Related to that, there is also, and we've refinanced probably 15 or 20% of our deals so far. So artists have come back and said, hey, my streaming's really grown. Can we look at this again? And we say, absolutely. We calculate kind of the buyout amount. We calculate what a new deal is worth today. And then we send them the difference and they sign a new term. So buyouts and refinances is both something we're absolutely open to. Corey says, what's the average amount of money that you lend to an artist? Well, first of all, Corey, I'm going to pick on you, and don't take it the wrong way, but it's not a loan, right? You've used the word lend, and we just want to be really clear. We are not loaning money. It's an advance. It's a different thing. The main thing being there's no personal liability. When you lend somebody money, they have personal liability, and you can chase them forever if they haven't paid you back. But this is a purchase of their income. Our average deal size is about $20,000. Our median deal size is about $40,000. And the reason for the difference in those is there's lots and lots and lots of small deals, and every so often there's a big deal that drags the size up. So that's sort of typical. But like I say, we range from $1,000 to $2 million. We haven't quite hit $2 million on the deal yet, but we've done certainly several seven-figure deals. And we're doing $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 deals every day. So hopefully that's helpful. Oh, and Def is just saying, thank you for clarifying. Excellent. All right. You think now, Henrik, we've wrapped it up?
I think we are in good shape. If not, folks, feel free to either reach out to us at MusicBiz or Matthew here through his email address he's dropped in the chat for any other questions. And if you'd like to relive this session at any point, we will be posting a recording of it live on our website shortly before the end of the week. Thank you all again for being here today, for your attention and for your questions. Great conversation here at the end. And thank you, Matthew, for leading today's informative discussion. Really grateful to you and the beatBread team for being here today. And look forward to welcome you all to the next MusicBiz webinar in a couple of weeks. Until then, have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, Henrik. Thanks, everybody.